Boom. All right, we are live on YouTube. Okay, cool. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Octant Community Meeting. It is June 9th, 2021. This is an exciting time. It is starting to get really warm, and the sun is bright. So let's get this community meeting over with, and we can all go outside, hopefully. All right, so before we get started here, let me do something like, well, actually, this is fine. Yeah, let me go ahead and start sharing the agenda. Cool. All right, so we got 5 items, and then we've got a 6th one, an open Q&A, which we will get to. So let's get started. So the first one is going to be about the release, and a lot of y'all might be realizing, hey, where's that release? We've been saying we're going to release for the last week and a half, and so just to give an update for everybody, we do keep the release dates on the board here, and we've bumped it out again because, well, 6/10, but anyway, it is currently pending 2 PRs. We want to get these 2 merged in. One is the streaming interface for client and the object store functional option. And these are generally not going to be impactful to anyone who's not working at VMware. These are mainly for internal things. Currently, in a lot of projects internally at VMware that might be using Octant, they implement their own streaming. They want Octant to be a WebSocket manager, and they want to use their own object store. So this is just to get them off using forks, and so we're waiting for these to be merged. But if they don't get merged in a timely manner, I think we can still go ahead and patch in a .1 simply because I think it's not worth delaying days and days over on this. Yeah, so essentially, if we can't get these merged in and have a release ready state by the end of the day, we're just going to cut anyways. Cool. Any questions, comments, concerns? Nope. Okay. Straightforward. We'll move on. So next one is following from last week. We talked a little bit about whether or not component actions should be a thing, and we were like, does anyone even use this? And a week later, someone files an issue saying it doesn't work. So granted, the bug was already fixed by the time this issue was reported. So it turns out that people do use this feature. And I've actually talked to some other folks at VMware who are building plugins around this pattern. So if we do choose to make this go away, it's not just ripping the Band-Aid off. It will involve some diplomacy. So that's going to be something to think about as we continue to decide if we ever do want to remove this. And maybe we don't. Maybe we just leave it alone. So the issue is 2541 for anyone who might be interested in seeing this development. Cool. Any questions about this one? All right. And for anyone who wants to follow up on this or has a strong opinion or say if they are using this, please do call this stuff out just simply because it's issues like these that ultimately have the decision-making power behind what we think and versus what we do. All right, so next item on the agenda is going to be the migration to Node 16 and NPM 7. So this one has a little bit of context to it. We used to have a ton of CI flakes that is captured in this essentially like this error callback type of errors, and it's very cryptic. If you Google for the specific error, it'll say like there's even a doc on this from the NPM folks that actually talk about what this error message means. And short answer in this paragraph, it could mean a whole bunch of different things. Anything from your cache is invalid to just upgrade your stuff. And so the prevailing sentiment here is to upgrade to the latest version of NPM from this one. And really what ended up happening was that we want to make this upgrade, but it turns out the move from NPM 14 to any of the newer, or I guess, let me take a step back. So you can technically just install a newer version of NPM, but because we're using node 14, it uses NPM 6. And if we wanted to do that in a CI environment, we could force an upgrade, right? We could just do like NPM install latest or whatever version pinned, but then we just have more hacks layered on top. So the move that I think that was ultimately decided on was to move over to node 16, which ships with NPM 7 by default. Now, the problem with that is they change how lock files work, specifically with peer dependencies, and this causes problems with how Octant as a project manages their dependencies. Since technically Octant is a mono repo, it has the NPM components, or I guess it has the dependencies from what is needed to build Octant, but also Storybook and other various, I think also like the testing dev dependencies. So it all just ends up being this giant, massive dependency file that doesn't migrate to the new lock file easily. So what ends up happening here is that even though we technically use node 16 to run in the CI environment, you can still use the older node versions. And eventually we will use this new lock file 2.0 that they use in node 16. But we're just waiting for stuff like Storybook and Angular to catch up on this.
Yeah. I think Angular is blocker there.
So yeah, that's kind of it for this one. And it, from the week that we've merged this, it looks like this type of error has gone away. So I'd say it was successful. Probably there are still some flakes, although less prevalent. One point of failure being this upload artifact action occasionally fails. So you can't assume that the internet connection on GitHub Actions is always perfect. And of course, we have the dash runner test. So this was mentioned a long time ago, but our dash runners technically would fail if you enable the race detector in Go to run these tests. So this is something that we will definitely want to fix over time, but for now, at least the CI environment is less annoying. And the to-do is we can now hopefully re-add the NPM cache and maybe take some decrease CI runtime and just save GitHub a little bit of bandwidth. So that's it for this one. Any questions?
I don't have a question. I just have a comment. I think this is awesome. I mean, this was a huge pain for a very, very long time, and one that was not so easy.
Well, if everyone's happy, I'm happy. So let's move on to the next one. I'll try to keep this short. So this one is going to be about Octant.
Sorry, Sam, I was on mute.
And I think I have this one somewhat pulled up, but essentially we rewrote the dynamic cache to use namespace informers instead of the old one. And this allows Octant to play better in RBAC restricted environments. And I was originally going to demo this Tanzu Developer Center. They have a lab that uses Octant, and they've upgraded this fairly recently. So they might have even had a fork and rebased over the patch. I'm not sure, but the core idea is there. So if you have something like an environment that doesn't let you do something like get deploy, well, this lets you get a deployment in this particular namespace, but if you do something like all namespaces, it will say no, and probably something like cluster scope, like persistent volume, no, get CRDs, right? So there's a lot of things that you can't get in this particular restricted RBAC environment. And of course, I would actually show you that the old lab wouldn't load anything, but I think they changed something about this environment on their end to allow it to work now. But if you do something like, let me actually pull this binary off of the nightly, curl Octant, let's download this new thing. And then I think it's like what, supervisor CTL stop Octant. Let's stop their Octant, and then we'll use ours, chmod plus x Octant. And then what is their thing to run? They have a command. because you have to enable a bunch of random variables. But let's say we have their command. Notice how here we actually show, okay, we can't list CRDs again, right? But now this is a warning, and as a result, we should be able to start seeing some interesting things on the screen at the very least. So now we see our secret, service accounts, role bindings, and I think if we just like apply the lab, it will show up. So we apply a database, and now our deployments and other things or whatnot is going to show up. So that's kind of cool. And you can go to our deployments and we can kick off and do interesting things. But if we do something like custom resource definitions, nothing will show up because it does not allow it. So that's kind of how it works in a nutshell. So for those who are interested in playing around with this lab, I left a link in this environment. Yeah, I left a link here. So it's still going to be using the old Octant, but keep your eyes out. We're hopefully going to be able to upgrade to the newer version of Octant soon. My audio just cut out, so let me go back to my put. There we go. Cool. Any questions about this one?
I have a comment about previous one. Sorry, I I had some microphone issues. Just about the migration to Node 16. I mean, that solves a really huge problem that we had for a long time. And, it was a hard problem too. So thank you, Sam, for working diligently on that. I know it's been a pain.
Stop sharing here.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. That's an audio show on my end.
Okay.
Oh, cool. Yeah, sorry, I missed that last part.
So, thank you for being persistent and getting this one to the, and I know it was a really hard problem. It took a long time to figure out what's the proper solution. And it's been a huge pain, just looking at those failures. I think at some point, that for me at least, it was like 50% chance of failure build, which dramatically slows down the workflow and stuff like that. So it's great to see those pipelines green all the time now, honestly. So thank you so much for that. That's huge deal for developer productivity. And I think at some point we should definitely switch to NPM 7 to the new format, new what's the right name? New way the dependencies are tracked. But I think Angular is right now the limiting factor. I think once Angular switches to that, we should be able to. It's like cards falling apart, and once Angular goes on, hopefully Clarity will work with that Angular version 2. And we, at some point, I'm hoping that will help us with some other issues we are having, like, the versions that are kind of dependencies of the dependencies and things like that. So it's good to keep this. Not only fixes the build problem, but it gets us closer to solving some other issues too. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, totally. And we can definitely keep capturing like what's hard about this, simply because if we go into our web, let's see, package.json, we can see we even have stuff like React, right? Like this is by no means like a small project. And the only reason why we need React is like Storybook. And then we also have like, there's even a strong case that one could make that we should break apart from the monorepo because of this block file starting to get too complicated. But that's a matter of taste and opinion.
Yes, and new NPM format should definitely, it has workspaces, so it should allow us to keep a same package. I think it keeps a same package.log file, but you can have the multiple workspaces, so we can have like a Storybook and Octant.
Yeah, totally. totally. It's crazy to me that like if you want to build Octant, all of a sudden you're downloading React dependencies.
Right.
Cool. Well, that's yeah. I don't know if I missed anything. My audio cut out there like midway. Did anyone leave a comment for some of the other points that I might have skipped over?
No, I think Milan's was the only one.
Okay, cool. Yeah, sorry, Milan. I wasn't ignoring you.
No, I thought problem was mine. I was like, what's with my microphone?
Yeah. Linux and Bluetooth, classic. All right.
Right.
Resource viewer grouping preview. So I'm going to hand it off to you then.
Sounds good. Yeah, I just wanted to give a quick preview. Let me share screen quickly. Okay, so here I have this is a Octant running as an app inside the Electron. And on the right side, I have a browser with the latest code. And this is, I think this is 20. Yes, so it's release 020. So a problem we have with the resource viewer is a lot of resources, especially custom resources, have very complex diagrams like this one. And when you open this one, it's really hard to see what's going on there. It's basically, so the route I took is just to detect if there is a multiple objects, multiple resources of the same kind, just to display them as a one box and to make them expandable to show the details. And that is not loading. Let me check. Is it running? Huh. Let me go to, maybe this one is a little simpler. Sorry about that.
No problem. Like demos never fail.
Right, demo gods are not with me today.
Sacrifice is needed.
Right. Oh, I guess I wish I made a screenshot, but I don't have a backup plan today. Come on. Oh, well. Let me try to restart it.
Yeah, if I recall correctly, it's like if you have like the too many open files error, I forgot how to see how many are currently open, but let's say U limit or something, where you can bump it up to some arbitrarily large number.
There we go. This might happen after all. All right. Oh, God. No, it's not working. Give me just a sec. Let me try to restart. Wow, it showed up immediately after I stopped sharing, of course. Okay. So yeah, so instead of, let me bring this side to, so instead of showing all those, in this case, there's 3 machines, there's kube admin configs and GCP machines. We just display something like this, and then you can, if you want to see the details about them, you can expand them collapse. And once you expand them, those are basically like composite nodes. You can still move them around. You can still move the boxes around and see the details on the right. So that is, in a sense, how this is probably going to work. I'm still investigating other means of grouping, not only by kind, because if you look at deeper into this, you'll notice that there are some clusters. So maybe those clusters can be, maybe we can group based on number of connections. So objects that have many connections can be collapsed and then expanded. So that's another way of doing it. I really want to show this one. Hopefully, try one more time. And if it doesn't show up, that's okay. We can do it. Yeah, it's not working today. Sorry about that. So any comments, questions?
I think it's a great simplification. Definitely it is useful to collapse objects into something that's a little bit more readable. My only comment would be that collapse mechanism might be a little bit small to be identified.
Right.
That would be the only thing. But I like it a lot. It definitely makes more sense.
Yeah. Yes, the extension I'm using for that, I'm using basically default bitmaps for the collapse expand icons, and we can definitely do better. Maybe even use clarity icons just to make it consistent. Yes, so.
Yeah, I do have a question.
Mm-hmm.
In the last diagram, you have machines. What does it mean in that context? Are those worker nodes, or what is machines in that context?
It's just a custom resource that has those resources. Yeah.
Okay. Right.
Yeah, I really like that actually. As today I was using the resource viewer on Cluster API as well. And
right.
It was very difficult in that view right there, which was Cluster API is great. I think it would make it much easier, especially for that use case. It already makes it much easier where you can have huge amounts. I was looking today to cluster with 400 machines under a machine deployment. And the resource viewer, it took a bunch of time to open, and then you just couldn't understand anything because of the kubeADM configs and the machines, and that would just make it much easier to open up and view, for sure.
Right. Yeah, that's a great usage example. I think that's the kind of the core problem you're trying to solve. I'm not sure. I never tested 400. I'm not sure how would that work, but definitely something we should be able to address with this feature.
Yeah, no, it definitely looks great on my side.
Awesome.
Yeah, this looks really nice, Milan. I think I would like to see some type of a different color scheme for collapsed items that represents kind of almost like the health or the status as a collection. So instead of just like maybe similar to what we do for the pods when we show their individual health statuses, like showing some type of artifact like that when it's collapsed. And then when you highlight a collapsed node, it would be nice to have, I think we want to determine what is the summary of a collapsed node, like a collapsed group that ends up being useful, right? Because just writing everything out in a big long list in the object status ultimately will produce the same problem as text instead of as a graph. So trying to, I think, just off the top of my head, something like the most recent set of like error events or warning events across all of the objects that are in that grouping, or some, I mean, I don't know exactly what it would be yet, but some useful thing to say, like, I click on this group, like I look at the grouping, all I see are green dots, so I can ignore it, or it doesn't have any dots because it's config or something that doesn't really have status to it. Or I look at the group, it's green dots and a red dot, and I click on it, and what I see is the overall status, and then like a link to the unhealthy one, or something like that. Something to make it fast to like take it from condensing the information, but then making that condensed information now useful and actionable. I think it's just the next step for this, but so far this is definitely on the right track.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've been thinking, the one thing I was thinking, if this is collapsed, maybe we can just list the pods. That would be, or maybe show them as you said, as like a tiny hexagons, like we do in other views. So like a bunch of those small dots, basically, and give summary errors and things like that. I think we already showed the errors. There are none in this view. Most recent errors, but they show up only for, last event. So maybe something like that. I think this is really important for diagnostics and troubleshooting, just to show last event. And if we can expand that to the whole group, that would be even better, I think. So cool. Yeah, thank you so much for all the comments. And I think, Cara, when you said it should be a little more discoverable, I think you're absolutely right. And I think you're thinking about, this not showing up. So maybe this plus sign should always be there. It should be a little better. Currently, it doesn't scale well as well. And so I'll be improving that as well.
We can poke around the clarity icon, see if there's something there.
Right. Cool. Awesome. Thank you so much. I apologize again for the demo. I think I should have rebooted my machine. It's been a while.
Also, Scott, as someone who is using it against a large set of resources with Cluster API, if you have any thoughts on like what type of summary information for one of those collections that you would like to see surfaced, please, you know how to talk to us, but Slack channel or GitHub or wherever, just let us know what you run into as you're using it that you think might be helpful.
Yeah, definitely. I will give some thought into that, and especially on the Cluster API side, where I have a bit more experience with the larger scale things. I will, send something out on Slack with some ideas that I have for that.
That would be awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cool. Thanks for sharing, Milan. That's awesome. That's why VMware pays you the big bucks. All right. So let's see. Well, if there are no more comments on Resource Viewer, we'll move on to open Q&A. So we got one Q&A from maybe Liam. I'm going to guess it's Liam. Maybe.
Yep, it was me.
Yeah. Okay. So injecting custom CSS for plugins in the Shadow DOM ? So I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, so basically I've been working on some plugins recently, and I tried to fiddle around with some of the formatting to get a few buttons a bit more spaced apart. And this was despite using the button group, where it seems like there are also like a few slight bugs there. And I figured it might be worth investigating whether it would be possible or worthwhile to add the ability for plugins to inject their own CSS for their components at like a plugin level. So basically, an idea I had is that there would be somewhere where you could either include like a CSS file or just like a string of like CSS styling. And then that would automatically be applied to whatever is like the styles in the CSS file or string would be applied to the view in the plugin tab for the specific plugin. So that way you could basically customize any of the components, and it would be beneficial because right now the way it works is, to my best understanding, Clarity will release some kind of component, and then we will import that Clarity component into Octant, and then we will make a few modifications for it to be available as a plugin. So it would take a while for those changes to go through, and especially if you're using, let's say, the TypeScript plugin library, that would have to be updated as well to reflect the new changes. So being able to just customize things yourself without having to make a fork would be really easy and convenient. And I think there are like a lot of additional things you could do in a plugin just by being able to change a few styles around. So I figured I'd bring it up here because I wanted to see what people thought about it.
I like that idea, and it kind of goes together with theming, right? So maybe we can start exposing theme more inside the plugins, and start there. And after we do that, maybe we can just focus on a like a smaller objects. Like if you, let's say you want to override some properties of a card and apply CSS there directly. So it might be a good idea to play with it. I know there's some quirks with the Shadow DOM and Angular, but if it's feasible, it's definitely something we should explore, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I think I like the idea. I think it's, I know theming is something that we've kind of had long outstanding as an issue. I can't remember if it's called theming, but there's been some, I can't remember the exact name of the issue off the top of my head, but I know there's been issues around like being able to provide a custom icon, being able to override, like just generally they're like, oh, we want to be able to extend this component, override this component. And some of those things ultimately end up being styling changes that get baked into the component itself. I think lifting some of that style out into a predefined set of overrides that we allow, and then allowing plugin authors to essentially ship a CSS, like a CSS set of overrides that would then be used in the Shadow DOM would, I think, provide that bridge of being able to keep control over the overall look and feel of any plugin within Octant, but still providing plugin authors the freedom to customize and make things a little more tailored to their use cases, but without being like, here, just go apply any CSS you want and Wild West it. So I like the idea.
Yeah, ditto. I would say we've also called it branding before. I don't know if you'd see it as an issue called branding, but the problem has always been the Wild West nature of it. People can do some pretty terrible things when they're allowed free reign with CSS. So there's always the danger of just making the application not unusable, but highly inaccessible. So being able to pare down kind of what is themable, that's not a word, but anyway, what is able to be changed and what isn't. But yeah, it's a great feature to have for sure.
Yeah, I think themable is definitely a word. And I absolutely agree. I mean, the biggest problem is just the scope, right? Because with CSS, you can target pretty much anything. So the trade-off here is not to give too much open. So, if you have a single plugin destroying your total application look, that's definitely not a great thing. So if we can find a good way to target specific parts of the UI, I definitely think that would be a good idea. I mean, in general, I have no problems if you're asking for trouble. You know, if you put hot pink background on your plugin, that's fine. If you want to do that, I'm okay with that. I don't mind totally. But if you put that same hot pink background in the whole Octant, that might be a problem for everybody else. So if we can solve that problem, I think this would be a great feature.
I think so the idea would be to just have these styles be scoped to the actual component that is containing all the elements that are displayed in the plugin, so that it's kind of encapsulated and like sandboxed. And I'm pretty sure that's definitely possible with Angular. I know you could do it with Vue, which is the framework that I used before. Again, like just for context, the very minor issue that I was trying to resolve was just adding like a tiny amount of like margin to a couple buttons. So even like minor things like this still seem to be kind of difficult within Octant and can make an application look really like a lot more clean. That's kind of the idea, I guess, maybe.
Yeah, I think my only concern would be we want to avoid if there are things that are generally going to be making Octant better with its own UI, as well as any plugin authors UIs, and we want to make those like the new default. I would prefer us making useful UI enhancements and improvements as the default, so that everyone benefits from them, and having overrides for those explicit cases where there's some other reason to change the style. If the reason to change the style is it looks better this way, and we agree as a group that it looks like in the case of this spacing on the button groups, like that might be a more general change that we want to think about incorporating instead of something like that as an override. So that's just something to keep in mind as you're going through the exercise.
Yeah, and Liam, I wanted to. You probably have already. Well, you might or might not have seen this. So, a lot of these Clarity core components, they have tunable parameters that are available through here as well. And typically these are predefined by Clarity, and they have their own documentation and such for this kind of stuff. So if you're injecting a custom status, I believe the escape hatch for web components in general is to essentially you create a style tag, and then you append like the inner HTML of that style tag with whatever, like basically like CSS as string inside of the CDS button for your new CSS values to register. So that's essentially what makes this weird or difficult, is that it kind of depends on the component. Like buttons, it makes sense, but for something that Octant, like a component that Octant has a wrapper around, it probably wouldn't need such a complex mechanism. So definitely, depending on which component that you want to stylize, there might just be an easier way. It might just be another configurable option that should exist and this is to what Wayne was saying earlier, that if it's a better default, then we should just absolutely have the tunable or just have it in our base CSS files rather than having to make it complicated.
Yeah, sounds good.
Cool. All right. Well, we can, and I think the best way to, if we want to continue the discussion, is to open an issue for this, and we can all comment on like specifically what we want out of this. And so, cool. Well, anyone else have any additional questions, comments on this injecting custom CSS, or just other open Q&A? If not, thank you for coming to this community meeting. Super productive one. Love it. Keep it up, everyone. All right. Later, y'all.
Thank you all.
You-